Joe Jackson. Was he really the villain? I don't think so. And I was watching a couple of videos today, and Eric Benet had said something on TikTok, and he was saying how, people were talking about the movie didn't have much of a story. He said, well, we had a superhero and a villain. And I thought to myself, a villain? Usually a villain wants to do the superhero harm. So I disagreed. Joe was not the villain. He was a dad that was present. And you know what? I saw that in a comment earlier. And I go, that's right. This says Michael Jackson had a dad that was present. As sometimes you think, oh, everybody got something better than you do, you know, until you go and see what the other people got. Shit. So I'm like, what they had, they had a dad that was there. They had a dad that was hardworking. They had a dad that believed in them. They had a dad that wanted to see his children do better than him. He must have had a vision, or yeah, he had a vision. He saw something because I'm just gonna go by the movie, the American Dream biopic, the mini series, and he, his goal was to get to California, and he was seeing, because that's why he was so upset with Reby when she got married, because I guess in his vision the whole family went, and he wanted to make sure that dream came true. Excuse me. But I'm sitting here and I was thinking, like, that's right. He had a present father. He had a father that cared enough to work two jobs and then have them rehearsal. They said it was times when he wouldn't pay a bill and buy the children instruments. And yeah, think until they started making money and they were out, performing. I'm pretty sure, I don't know how much money they were making on these gigs, but just performing at these nightclubs, those kids had to get up and go to school the next morning, and he had to get up and go to work. So they practiced. He was there. He, made sure they had choreography just right. I mean, he practiced. We seen him whoop Marlon till Marlon got that spin right. I don't think the man knew that his children was going to be this big phenomenon. I don't think he knew that, but I think he knew that he had something special. And I think a dad just wanted to see his children do better. And we got to think, remember, I think, is he born like 1926 or 1928? My grandmother was born 1928. They raised their kids with an iron fist, honey. They couldn't do nothing. All my mom and them could do was go to church. They did church activities, but honey, my grandma, you stepped out of line, she was gonna beat your ass. You know, I cuss. My grandma did not. But those how those people were back then. And to think, he said, I didn't abuse my kids. I didn't beat them no more than anybody else did. Their kids. So could it have been once they got to California that, when they got to telling people their story, people was like, well, that was abusive. Could that, because you don't know that it's something, different. Like he said, I think once Michael had said that he was so frightened of his dad that he would throw up or whatever. And he said he didn't know nothing about that. He said, but if he did, he regurgitated all the way to the bank. And I thought, yeah, he did. And that was one of my biggest gripes with the movie is that we Coleman Domingo really played like a villain to Michael Jackson, where all this man really wanted was his kids to succeed and be able to have generational wealth. So, because I seen the interview, because, all the Michael Jackson stuff is happening now. And Tito, he talks about, his dad and how he used to have them like box, and we seen that on the American Dream movie, box the gangsters in the neighborhood. The dad was always trying to make sure he kept his kids busy, that they didn't get in the streets. So I'm like, bravo, dad, because that's what he did. Because how many present dads are out there now? How many? We know LeBron James' dad wasn't there. And now his dad wants to be in his life because LeBron is rich. But those, it was his mom, single mother. This man had 9 kids with his wife. And one outside kid, but that's after they got famous. But 9 kids, and like he said, back in them days, fit men to pick up and leave. And gone on. But he didn't. He decided to stay, you know. And I seen an interview where the guy asked him, did he work? He said, what? Yeah, he worked at the steel mill. He was a welder. He said, I had 2 jobs. He had all those kids. He had 6 boys. And I know, like, when I was coming up, my brothers are younger than me, but shoot, my mom would go to the grocery store, and when my brothers were teenagers, or well, I really wasn't at home when my little brother became a teenager, but even my little brother being like 11, 12, my mom would go to the grocery store, and then my other brother is like 16. They ate up everything. So I could not imagine having 6 boys. So they said, somebody had said he came back home. He went to work and came home to a 2-bedroom home with 9 kids in it and his wife. After work. And still had the children to practice. Because he said he never really wanted that many kids. He said, just a couple, like, 2 or something. But, at that time, people had big families. And it wasn't like, I'm not saying birth control wasn't invented, but I don't think it was common like that, you know. So, and if it was, you probably had to have some kind of money to get it. It wasn't like you was just going to buying birth control. No. Because most of them, that's why they had so many kids. And a lot of times, well, usually people who lived in the South and had farms, they had so many kids to help with the farm. Like my grandparents, they lived in Missouri and they had a farm and they had a house in town. So they had a farmhouse, but my granddaddy died in the 70s, honey. My grandma sold that farm because was living here in Indiana, so she, he still lived in Missouri and she was here. And he was supposed to be moving here because he didn't never want to live here. And when he decided to move here, he had a heart attack. So he never lived here. But he would come and visit. My grandma would definitely go up there a lot too. Because she always went to St. Louis. They lived in a small town called Poplar Bluff, Missouri. And but yeah, just to think about that man had a lot of kids. I got the guy cutting my grass today. Line guy is here. So, but to have that many kids, because I know I only had 2. So I could not imagine having, and my kids are 6 years apart, 6.5 years apart. So I couldn't imagine having stair step children and 9 of them, and 9 mouths to feed, and me in a 2-bedroom house with 1 bathroom. Everybody on top of everybody. I could not imagine that. So no, I don't think he was a villain. I think Joseph Jackson did what he was supposed to do as a man. He took up time with his children. And we know we heard the story about when Latoya had the book or whatever, and she said that, all these bad things had happened to her when she was married to that white man. And that white man eventually had her stripping at the strip club, or she was supposed to strip, and she had to call them Jackson. I need help. I can't be doing this. I'm Latoya Jackson. And because the family said that wasn't true, that she was being assaulted. So, and I don't believe that the mom would have stayed for that. But I do think, Joe ruled with an iron fist, and that's probably all he knew, and that's what they did back then. So it wasn't uncommon for people to get toe up. They get spanked, a little bit more than spanked, you go get the switch. Now, I ain't never had to go and get my own switch. When my husband told me when he was little, he used to go get his own switch. So I ain't never had to do that. But I done got hit with a switch before. But and that's my grandma did that. No, it wasn't my grandma. It might be my grandma bought us switches. And my mama used them. But it was I think we need to give Joe his just due. He made sure his boys were successful. He put in the time with his children to try to make them something, make them out to be something. So I wouldn't say that, he was a villain, some no account ass person that, just didn't do right by his kids. He did. He just was stern, a control freak probably, that's why control, I'm in control. But let them have a daddy like them the Barges daddy. Here they got a whole YT dad, and he was assaulting his kids in the worst way, girl and boy. Like he was a no account because like they grew up very poor. And that's why all of them had all those addictions they had, allegedly. I seen the DeBarge movie. You know. And they called the police when he would abuse their mother. Police wouldn't do nothing because she was a black lady. So I don't think that, there's a lot of cases out there, because first of all, let me go back here. I'm just rambling. When Janet and James the Bird got together, Joe didn't want that. So I don't want some drug-filled Negroes. Because to them, he probably thought they were ghetto. He didn't want that with his kids. But still ran off and married this drug addict man. Honey, I seen there was a short or something, a little documentary they were doing, and how James and his brother, either Mark or Randy, one of them two, is living in a like a RV, like on the streets of LA, and they look bad. I mean, look bad. We can say what we want to say about Jermaine here, but none of them Jacksons look like that. None of them Jacksons went to prison. And when Michael Jackson was going through those assault charges and all that, who was there? His daddy was right there with him. So I don't think that people should call this man the villain in the Michael story, because he was not the villain. He didn't want to see his son do bad, or see his son not succeed. He wanted his kids to all succeed together. And he seen that Michael was the talent that everybody wanted. So he wanted them to, yeah, we wanted them to tour all over the world. That's not what Michael wanted to do. But he's definitely not the villain. He was not Michael Jackson. What's going on? Okay. He was not the antagonist. Um, he wanted well for his children. And he was a father that stayed. He was a father that, provided for his children and took time with his children. And like I said, when I seen that in the comments, because people were like, "No, he had a dad. His dad really, took time with them." There's a lot of people that had daddies that ain't do shit with them. He may have been stern and had his way, but I really believe that definitely if it wasn't for Joe, we would not have had the Michael Jackson that we know. We wouldn't have. They would probably been, I don't know if anybody would have been successful. How many people we know come from Gary, Indiana? I mean, what's for you could be, but I think that with the dad putting in that much time with them and, shopping them around, take them, they didn't perform at the Apollo. They in their little Winnebago van. They are, he's traveling around trying to get his boys, um, you know, get them seen and have them be successful. So, but he had his way of doing things. And there was like a picture, uh Suge Knight, um Ike Turner, and Joe Jackson. Oh, somebody said, how they get them together? But I will say that I believe, I mean, in the stories that we were told, and in the American Dream, we didn't see that he um, abused Katie or Catherine or Mother. We didn't see that. And I hope that wasn't the case. She was a woman who had polio. But and even when Michael passed away, he didn't put his dad in his will. And there was, I don't know if it was somebody interviewed him. I can't even think of the man's name. Oh my God, King, something King. Oh God, he's passed away too. Older man, I can see his face. I can't think of his name. But anyways, he asked him how did he feel that, about Michael not putting him in the will. And he said, that wasn't going to change my life. He said, the will, Michael had his mom in the will. He said, Katie's a very fair lady. Yes, she is. So usually, he probably wanted to put all them people in there. He used to put his mama, and his mama was a fair person, is a fair person. So she took care of the family. And that's how he left it. But I think we be giving too much smoke to Joe. He may have had his ways, but I don't think that Joe was just totally mean to Michael. I don't. I think he just expected you to do what the fuck he said. But I don't think that. Oh, I'm just gonna pick on him. I'm gonna beat the shit out of him. I feel like beating somebody ass today. So I know. I just think he just wanted his kids together and wanted to see them succeed. And he had his way to, it was his way or no way. His way of his way of the highway. You got to go. Because you remember, he didn't want none of his kids to get married. When Tito wanted to marry Dee Dee, like I done watched the video about Dee Dee today. But all those things were explained in the American Dream, the Jackson story or whatever. I don't, man, he got the name wrong, but I know the American Dream is in there. But he wanted his children to, succeed in life, and he had to. The Jackson Five was one of the biggest black groups ever. Michael Jackson is the king of pop. Janet Jackson at one time, she was rated like Beyonce. He did a damn good job. And even one of his children, Jermaine, married into the Gordy family. So I think that, yeah, he was probably a person who us today, I'm not even say us, these millennials and younger probably wouldn't understand. But for a Gen X person, we know about getting our asses whooped. Our parents told us about how they got their butts whooped because my mom is 70. So she's in between the ages of, the Jacksons, from the youngest to the oldest. The oldest one, I think, living is Rebe. She's somewhere about 75, 76. And then you have Janet, the youngest, and she's somewhere about 60. They know that life. And my grandmother once said, because she was a widow, um, she had three boys. She said, she's a little lady. She said, shoot, I had to put the fear in them. So they knew not to try me. So, and I think they respected their dad, and they know without their dad, they wouldn't have never seen the success that they saw. And that was his hard work, his drive, putting into those boys, teaching them how to play different instruments, buying instruments, coming home from work and still rehearsing with the boys, training them how to box. He did all those things. So Michael Jackson had a present father. So we can say all we want to say, but we can't make him the villain. He didn't want to see no harm to his son. He wanted the best, but he wanted all his children to succeed. You know, so I got on here to say, like not too much on Joe Jackson, not too much. We ought to really celebrate him, cause honey, that daddy was there. And when I was watching that, it was like a home video or something. Michael Jackson is talking about Janet Jackson, how they used to call her Dunk. And he was making, he's being petty, saying Janet always eating. Because you remember Janet her weight kind of used to go up and down. And then it's like his dad is sitting there eating ice cream, and the monkey right by him, Bubbles is. And then later on in this video, it shows where Janet, because Janet was pretty much a daddy's girl. How Janet, well, I'm just assuming, probably till they found out about the, what's her name, somebody, Jackson. Um, but the girl, Janet and Michael had bought the dad a boat. They didn't celebrate birthdays. They celebrated. They had a day that was called Joe Day and a day that was Catherine's Day. So they bought him a boat. I thought if he was that kind of person that was, like a tyrant around the house, I think Michael would have probably been on the first thing smoking out of the house. Because even in the Michael movie, they show there's a scene where Michael's going into his room and his dad is sitting there. So it wasn't like, there was like an apartment, where his dad couldn't get in or he kept his room locked. Like it was like all up in the main house. That's the way they showed it. But the daddy was sitting in there in the room. And he's like, what you doing in here? But I don't think that he was the antagonist to Michael. I don't. Even though, in the thing they had Joseph as like Captain Hook in the book. But I think if Michael Jackson probably had to compare stories to people who had a father that didn't give a damn. And a lot of people probably say, I wish I'd have had that for a dad. Someone that seemed like he cared. Someone who wanted to see me be great. He didn't want his kids be, any drug addicts, prison bound, no account men. So he figured he'd keep a tight rein on his children. And that's what he did. And he ruled with an iron fist. But that was the signs of that time. So we can't use 2026 lenses and try to condemn the things that happened in the 50s, 60s, 70s. We can't. Those are different people back then. They had a different struggle. And that's what he knew. Because, each generation, I feel like the parent gets a little bit more lenient. My mother was lenient compared to how her mother raised her. I mean, we did get whoopings, but, we I can't get mad at it. A lot of things I didn't get caught at, but yeah, when I got caught, I got it. But I think that so my mom, she would allow us to, like my mom, she couldn't do nothing. So definitely we could go to the teen parties. Especially like if it was like a teen club, we could go. Um we could do things, like my mom, she probably could never even talk to boys on the phone or even be on the phone. I ain't even never thought to ask my mom that. That was not even a question that even came across my mind. And I thought it was weird when we were in middle school, and it was like, I can't talk to boys on the phone. I'm like, why not? We with them all day at school. And I had two younger brothers. So my younger brother, who is was 2 grades below me, we kind of share the same friends. So if everybody come over there, we all in my room talking or whatever, or we'll go into my brother's room. But it was, I thought it was so weird. I did. I would have never even thought. Can I talk to a boy on the phone? I never asked. Just gave my number out. We kept it moving. I never asked. My mom didn't put them kind of stipulations, but at a certain I couldn't date until I got 16. But let's like go somewhere with the boy. But shoot, we all was hanging out. We would go. Like if we all meeting out at whatever kind of teen party or whatever. I could just be out in the streets, but I could go to different functions. I could participate in school events. I could be in school clubs. I mean, I never thought to ask. My mother couldn't do any of that. And she was good in sports. And she was very, very smart. And my grandmother was, no, that was the devil. You had to go to church to know about that Bible. That's how my grandmother played it. So I'm thinking, yes, Joe was a present father that ruled with the iron fist, but loved his kids enough to take out time with them. It wasn't like he, from what they showed us, we, had kids like the Denzel character on fences go get drunk, and not really have a relationship with the kids. I can't imagine making my kids rehearse. We're touring all over the place, and I don't have a relationship with the kids. And I wish somehow they would have showed that somehow, like it wasn't all bad. And like I said, he was there for Michael when Michael had to go through that court case. It was there. It was there with him every day. And like the whole family came together. So, like I said, let me talk about Joe. Daddy Joe. He wasn't a Rolling Stone. He might have had, was cheating on his wife, but I feel like, shoot, a lot of them men's did, especially them old granddaddies and great granddaddies. They all had a whole damn family right up the street on the other side of town. Had 10 kids over here with grandma and had kids over there with the other lady. So, I just want to say, hey, let's celebrate the man who made sure his son became ultimately king of pop, and that his sons actually, I mean, because we had, I wasn't born when they first came out, but a couple years later, but still, my mom said at that time, you ain't never seen no black family do this. None. These black boys were icons. All the girls was, I mean, a nice looking black family. People, they had that mob event, thing. The women was the kids. The black people were so excited because here are black boys that look like everyday boys, black boys that could sing, that could dance. Something we can say that that they could relate to. These are kids from around the way. They talk like us, they walk like us, they are us, and they are the hottest thing out there. You know, so yeah, let, let me get in my little bit on Joe Jackson. And I say we ought to celebrate him because he definitely wasn't the villain. He was not. He didn't want to see Michael Jackson. He wanted to see his demise. He wanted to see his son be great, but he wanted all of his children to be great. you know, so he didn't want to see the group. He wanted the family to stick together. So that's my thoughts and my opinions on Joe. Yeah, think about it because Michael Jackson's name is Michael Joe Jackson. Janet name is it Demita Joe? Janet Demita Joe or something like that. But anyways, that's it. That's all. Let me go up here and go see my daddy while I'm talking about somebody else's daddy. Let me go. So I'll talk to you guys later. I'm trying to make sure I get my lives in. I want to build up this algorithm. Let me know what your thoughts are on Joe Jackson. For all the ones who want to see it on the replay, let me know. We can talk in the comments. But these are my thoughts. But like I was saying, millennials, Gen Z may see it differently because that is a different time. This man born in the 1920s. That is a different time. So he raised them the way he knew how. So that was that. So I'll talk to you guys later. Y'all have a blessed evening. I'm gonna try to get back on tomorrow because my goal is to try to go live every day. So I got so many shows I got to catch up on. And I think Wednesday. I mean Wednesday. What is it? Saturday. I'll probably try to catch up on Love and Marriage Huntsville and Bell Collective and get that all done. So I'll talk to you guys later. Y'all have a great evening and good night.